From that moment onward, the instructor announced to everyone that Principal Mimir himself would take responsibility for declaring the exam results, urging all candidates to prepare themselves and listen carefully to what was about to unfold. Vigor, visibly nervous, leaned toward Aster and whispered anxiously, questioning whether the man before them was truly the director. His uncertainty deepened as he muttered that the man looked nothing like someone important, appearing instead as nothing more than an ordinary old figure. Aster, though slightly shaken himself with a bead of sweat forming on his face, reacted quickly and quietly rebuked Vigor, telling him that such a comment was disrespectful and inappropriate. At that moment, Principal Mimir shifted his attention directly toward Aster, recognizing him instantly. The sudden acknowledgement caused Aster to flinch slightly under the weight of that attention. Turning his gaze to all the participants, Mimir began addressing the group, explaining that their presence and actions had forced the Academy into making an extremely difficult decision. He elaborated that receiving such a large number of candidates at once was something unprecedented in the Academy's history. The idea of repeating the examination had been seriously considered, but after discussions and support from the other heads, a final decision had been reached. Hearing this, the remaining participants grew increasingly tense and anxious, unsure of what the outcome would be. Aster, unable to contain his curiosity, began to question what this decision meant for them. In a sudden shift of tone, Mimir smiled faintly and revealed the outcome. All of them had passed. The announcement sent shockwaves through the group. Gurion, in particular, was stunned beyond belief, unable to accept that Aster's plan had actually worked. Meanwhile, the instructor appeared visibly relieved and happy. The rest of the participants, including Aster, erupted into overwhelming joy, jumping and celebrating in excitement. Mimir continued, reminding them that from this point onward they must continue to do their best and prove that the Academy's decision had not been a mistake. He concluded by congratulating them on their admission and formally welcoming them into the Dorasal Knights Academy. As the day transitioned into night, the atmosphere softened. The newly accepted participants relaxed together, enjoying warm baths and the comforts of their new environment. Vigor, unable to contain his excitement, loudly expressed his happiness, overwhelmed by the luxurious food and the massive bathing facilities. He openly credited all of it to Aster, calling him their young master. Aster, however, remained silent, calmly carrying himself while casually flipping his hair, his composed demeanor adding to his striking presence. The other participants, equally thrilled, began agreeing with Vigor. Their admiration grew as they referred to Aster as their master, expressing disbelief that he had truly managed to influence such a result. Some even went as far as declaring lifelong loyalty to him. Nolan, however, reacted differently. With a dismissive tone, he mocked their opportunistic behavior, pointing out how everyone had previously supported Gron. He made it clear that he did not attribute their success entirely to Aster. Vigor immediately fired back, questioning Nolan's stance and mocking him as someone who had lost to Aster. Nolan, clearly irritated, denied losing and insisted that the match had only ended in a tie. Amidst the heated exchange, Aster once again drew attention simply by his calm presence. Flipping his hair and smiling faintly, he reflected on their situation, acknowledging that challenging the people of Elmheim had only a slim chance of success. Yet despite that, they had managed to become candidates. He believed that this small beginning would eventually grow into a powerful force, capable of bringing down Elmheim. With quiet determination, he declared internally that this marked the true beginning of their rebellion. Hearing this, his companions responded with subtle smiles, sharing in the unspoken resolve. Lost in thought, Aster reflected on his past. Both of his older sisters had already graduated from the academy. Among them, his sister Alphen had entered just a year before him. He believed that she would be well aware of the internal workings of the academy and would likely become a valuable ally in what was to come. He resolved that his journey at the night school would begin from this point, starting with adapting to his new life. As he rose from the bathtub and prepared to leave, he suddenly noticed something strange. All of his companions were staring intently at his back. Shocked and confused, he demanded to know what they were doing. The others explained their reasoning with complete sincerity. They believed that witnessing the legendary Seven Wings in person would bring them good luck. Some even thought that praying before such a sight might grant them blessings. Aster, completely exasperated, rejected the idea outright. Despite his protests, they proceeded to kneel down, joining their hands together in reverence, treating him like a divine figure. unable to deal with their behavior any longer. Aster left the scene. Nalen, watching everything unfold, sighed heavily and remarked that this situation would not lead to anything good. The scene then shifted smoothly to a much darker setting. Gurion was now kneeling on the ground before his mother, his head bowed at her feet. She glared at him with intense disappointment, expressing her anger over his failure. She criticized him harshly, pointing out that instead of crushing the so-called seven-winged brat, he had returned after being easily manipulated. She was particularly enraged that he had allowed such insults toward Elmheim to go unanswered. Gurion, trembling and filled with fear, apologized desperately, promising that he would make up for his mistakes and prove himself worthy in the future. Before he could say more, a powerful kick struck his chin, sending him flying backward. Blood spilled from his mouth and nose as he collapsed onto the ground. The attacker was revealed to be his sister, Lillian A. Elmheim. Filled with rage, she insulted him mercilessly, declaring that there would be no next time for someone as worthless as him. She compared him to useless scraps, stating that he was no better than someone fit only to be fed to magical beasts. She even likened him to Dariz, reinforcing her disdain. Placing her foot on him again, she continued her assault. Gurion, writhing in pain, begged her to stop, pleading desperately. Ignoring his cries, Lillian kicked him repeatedly, each strike causing him to groan louder in agony. As the pain overwhelmed him, Gurion's thoughts turned bitter. He blamed everything on Aster, cursing him internally. Fragments of his earlier conversation with Aster resurfaced in his mind, recalling how Aster had urged him to cooperate, reminding him that returning empty-handed would have consequences. He remembered questioning Aster, confused and fearful, only for Aster to coldly explain the reality of his situation. Being defeated by someone from a lower branch, and failing the exam could lead to severe consequences if reported to the main house. Aster had even described Dariz's tragic fate, emphasizing that such an end was not something anyone would wish for. He had offered Gurion a choice, to remain silent and ignore his actions in exchange for help. Returning to the present, the brutal beating continued until another voice intervened, urging Lillian to forgive him. The tone carried authority, and it belonged to Julius A. Elmheim, Gurion's brother. Gurion continued to cry and groan in pain as Julius appeared. Wearing a calm smile, before him, a masked girl was forced to kneel at his feet. With a composed yet unsettling demeanor, Julius spoke about the purity of their family's bloodline, suggesting that family members should get along. He directed this statement toward Alfin. Alfin, visibly frightened, trembled under his gaze. Their mother then addressed all her children, explaining that the long-standing image of House Elmheim as an unshakable fortress that oppressed the knights was beginning to crack due to the emergence of the so-called seven-winged individual. She emphasized that this was precisely why they needed to remind others of the true nature of their power. She spoke of real violence, implying that it was time to demonstrate it. Hearing this, both Lillian and Julius responded with twisted, sinister grins, clearly eager to carry out what was expected of them.